The smooth jazz tune of the Genevieve Jones theme, a classic Quinn Martin production starring Buddy Epson and Lee Meriwether, echoed faintly through the crowded room as the story unfolded on a lively evening. Tonight's episode, titled The Lonely Victims, began in the warm, ambient glow of a popular local lounge where people gathered to unwind after a long week. Two men sat at the bar, their eyes scanning the room as they engaged in light-hearted banter. Jack, a smooth-talking man with a sharp eye and an effortlessly charming demeanor, leaned closer to his companion, Alf, who seemed to know absolutely everyone in the establishment. Jack nodded toward a quiet corner and asked what was happening with the girl in the corner booth. Alf smiled knowingly and explained that her name was Luella, and she was in there a lot, working in one of the mail rooms upstairs. Jack nodded, processing the information, but quickly decided to pass, looking for someone else. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on another woman, prompting him to tell Alf to check that out because there was a live one. Alf chuckled and guessed that she modeled swimsuits, but Jack corrected him, guessing lingerie instead. Alf admitted that Jack certainly knew how to size them up, confirming that she dropped off mail mostly on Fridays and worked with a big pharmaceutical house that dealt in various drugs. Jack smiled warmly, telling Alf that he was a veritable fount of information and expressing his thanks. Alf accepted the compliment with a grin, praising Jack's clever hands as well, to which Jack offered a polite thank you. Turning his attention back to his potential companion, Jack ordered a refill of scotch and water, and when the woman noticed him, he suggested making it a match set. The young woman looked up, a bit startled, and mentioned that she was just about to go. Jack, refusing to let the opportunity slip away, told her that now she could not go because she had not even finished her drink yet. He introduced himself simply as Jack and asked for her name. She hesitated, but Jack smiled warmly, saying that it was much better already. He offered her a cigarette, which she declined politely, and then he asked if she came to this place often. She admitted that she did not usually visit, and when she asked him the same, Jack claimed that he almost never came there either. Leaving some money for the check, Jack suddenly remembered something and announced that he had an important business phone call to make which would only take him a few minutes. He playfully instructed her to wait right there, warning her that otherwise someone might rip off his scotch, and she laughed gently, promising that she would guard it bravely, while he stepped away. As Jack walked into the hallway, his charming smile vanished when a woman named Laura suddenly intercepted him. She looked distressed and asked what he was doing there, explaining that she had waited for him to come back to San Diego for 6 long weeks. Frank, which was Jack's real name, looked around nervously and reminded her that he had told her to stay in San Diego because she knew how dangerous it was for him up here. Laura, her voice trembling with emotion, asked about her own feelings, stating that she was going crazy and that he could have at least done what was called once in all that time. Frank suddenly cut her off, noticing a man watching them from across the hallway, a man holding a cigar. Frank urgently told her to act like she did not know him, claiming that the man was one of them. Laura sighed deeply, tired of the constant anxiety, and begged Frank for no more lies. Frank feigned innocence, asking what lies she was talking about, and urged her to get out of there, claiming that they were going to have all the exits covered and would have to figure out another way to escape. Laura confronted him directly, pointing out that he had said he loved her and wanted to marry her. Frank insisted that he did want to marry her more than anything else in this world, but Laura felt he was lying again. She brought up the stories he had told her about having to pay off some gambler, reminding him that she had even helped him rob her own company because he claimed they would kill him if he did not pay them $50,000. Frank maintained that the debt was real, but Laura stopped him, stating that there were no gambling debts and that he and his friends had pulled the robbery entirely for themselves. Frank asked if that was what she really thought, and Laura asked what else she was supposed to think after he just left her without ever calling. Frank tried to soothe her, claiming he just did not want her to get mixed up in all of this and could not let anyone know where she was, asking her to understand his perspective. Laura, wanting desperately to believe him, asked if that was truly the case, and Frank assured her it was, admitting he had faults but emphasizing that he had always been honest with you. He then suggested a plan where he would go first to lead the watchers away, instructing her to wait 10 minutes before following him to her place. Laura refused to separate, insisting on going with him, even threatening to call the police if he did not let her join him. Frank looked at her coldly, telling her that she should have stayed in San Diego, leaving a lingering sense of unease. Meanwhile, back at the bar, Frank returned to his current target, apologizing for taking so long. Alf teased him, and Frank joked that his new companion, whose name was Ann Hobson, was an administrative assistant at Norlam Pharmaceuticals. They shared a pleasant conversation, and Frank invited Ann out to a very nice, very quiet little restaurant where the scampi was terrific, an invitation that Ann happily accepted. A few days later, the seasoned private investigator Barnaby Jones sat in a quiet room, speaking with Laura's grieving sister, Miss Inners. They discussed the tragic circumstances surrounding Laura, whom Miss Inners described as a very strong and handsome woman. Miss Inners firmly refused to accept the official ruling of suicide, stating that if she did, she would have to accept the blame for driving Laura to the hospital. She explained that they had always gotten along perfectly until Laura suddenly quit her job and ran off to San Diego to marry a perfect stranger named Frank, a man she had picked up in a bar. Miss Inners had not approved of the sudden romance, and she noted that the newspapers never mentioned a husband because they were never married. Laura had only returned home for 2 days before her untimely death, remaining completely silent about what had happened. Barnaby suggested that finding Frank might shed some light on her mental state, and Miss Inners agreed, though she confessed she did not even know his last name. She handed Barnaby a postcard Laura had sent from San Diego, noting that someone had purposefully cut off the name of the motel. Barnaby promised to look into the matter for her, seeking nothing but the absolute truth. Barnaby began his investigation by visiting Laura's former workplace, speaking with the manager, Mr. Inbal, who highly praised Laura's work ethic alongside a dedicated employee named Irving. Mr. Inbal explained that the company was still recovering from a major robbery that occurred 6 weeks ago, around the same time Laura left for San Diego. He firmly denied any connection between Laura and the crime, describing her as entirely trustworthy. When asked about the man she was supposed to marry, Mr. Inbal recalled seeing him a few times and identified him as Frank Miller, a business equipment salesman who was around 35 years old, good-looking, with light hair and a small scar on his chin. He mentioned that they had met in a local singles bar in the neighborhood. As the days went on, Frank, now operating under the name Jack Arno, continued to charm Ann Hobson. During a romantic outing, and questioned why Jack was so interested in the inner workings of her pharmaceutical company. Jack deflected with humor, claiming he was simply looking for a new job to be closer to her. However, their date was interrupted at the Marina when an old acquaintance named Sheila Wiles spotted him. Sheila expressed surprise at seeing Frank again, but Jack quickly covered his tracks by introducing Ann as his wife, and was amused by the encounter. But Sheila, speaking with her roommate Connie Maxwell later, revealed that Jack had previously told her his wife was in a wheelchair for life, realizing that Jack Arno was a man of many secrets and false identities. Barnaby Jones continued to trace Frank's steps through the local singles bars, eventually speaking with a perceptive bartender who remembered Frank Miller well. The bartender described Frank as a different breed who targeted intelligent women with excellent jobs, just like the young woman who had tragically jumped from the roof. He revealed that Frank was present in the bar alone on the very night of the tragedy. While Barnaby was gathering information, Sheila Wiles approached him, having heard him asking questions. After learning that Barnaby was a private detective, Sheila playfully offered to help, hinting that she might run into Frank again and promising to have him call. Back at his apartment, Frank was mapping out a sophisticated heist, studying blueprints and discussing security details over the phone, noting that the outer alarm system was tied into a central station with video cameras in 11 key locations. His planning was interrupted by Ann, who had come over unexpectedly, and confronted him, having overheard him discussing her company's strictly confidential security system. Recognizing that she had caught him, Frank quickly spun a masterful web of deception, falsely claiming that he was actually an undercover officer for the Narcotics Bureau. He told her that they had reliable information that Norlam Pharmaceuticals was going to be robbed in the next few days by an inside source. He feigned vulnerability, telling and that if she revealed his secret, it would blow his cover and make him a dead man. And, completely deceived and deeply moved, promised to keep his secret safe. Barnaby Jones met with a police lieutenant to discuss the diamond robbery, noting the suspicious timing of Laura's death just after the crime. The lieutenant confirmed that the thieves knew exactly how to bypass the security system, executing the robbery in just 6 minutes, but stated there was no direct evidence of foul play regarding the suicide. Barnaby then collaborated with his trusted associate, Betty, who had tracked down the Edgecombe Motel in San Diego using the zip code on the postcard. The motel manager had recognized Laura and Frank, noting that they registered under assumed names and that Frank had abandoned her after the first few days, providing a clear path of manipulation. As Frank's plans neared completion, Sheila Wiles visited his apartment, confronting him with the floor plans of the companies that had been robbed. Realizing that Frank was a dangerous criminal, Sheila attempted to blackmail him into marriage, suggesting they run away to Acapulco together. Frank pretended to agree, but his dark nature took over. Shortly afterward, the police discovered Sheila's body in the water near the docks. Barnaby Jones arrived at the scene, observing a nasty bruise on her head and discovering strange fiber particles on her dress. Barnaby then interviewed Sheila's grieving roommate, Connie Maxwell, who revealed that Sheila had recently run into Frank at the Marina, Cordoba, where he was living under the name Jack Arno. Barnaby visited the apartment building and confronted Frank directly. Frank attempted to play off his name change as a way to avoid gambling debts, claiming that Laura had simply overreacted to a minor romance. When Barnaby mentioned Sheila's death, Frank feigned shock but remained coolly detached, dismissing the coincidence entirely. Barnaby, however, knew he was getting closer to the truth. That evening, the tension reached its peak at Norlam Pharmaceuticals. Frank convinced Anne to help him obtain the sensor key for the main alarm, claiming it was necessary for his undercover operation, and retrieved the key from the top right-hand drawer of the desk, completely unaware of the danger. After Frank sent her away, Barnaby Jones arrived at the building and intercepted, and just as she was leaving, he revealed the grim truth to her, explaining that 2 other women who had dated Frank Miller were now dead and their companies had been robbed. And was initially defensive, but Barnaby's earnestness made her realize the horrible reality. Inside the building, the security guards noticed that the camera feeds were malfunctioning. When they went to investigate, Frank drew his weapon, threatening them. However, Barnaby and the police intervened just in time, disarming Frank and placing him under arrest. With Jack Arno finally exposed and captured, a sense of relief washed over everyone involved. Barnaby later spoke with Anne and Laura's sister, offering words of comfort and ensuring that justice had been served, bringing a peaceful and reassuring end to a dark chapter.